All right, everybody, welcome back to Off the Grid on the Record, the show where we spotlight the voices pushing clean energy tech forward with grit, guts, and some game-changing ideas. I'm your host, Yarek, and it's great to be back here with you guys again. Today's guest is someone who's not just innovating solar, he's re-engineering how it gets done. Joining us is Samuel, the founder and CEO of Solvari Incorporated, a Texas-based solar startup that's transforming installations with their all-in-one plug-and-play panel system. Solvari's single SKU approach tackles one of the solar industry's biggest bottlenecks, installation complexity and labor shortages. Whether you're an installer, contractor, or builder, Samuel's system might just be the operational breakthrough that you've been waiting for. We'll talk about his founding journey, the nuts and bolts of Solvari, how design can drive scale, and what it means to build a clean tech business that truly simplifies things without cutting any corners. So let's plug in and power up. Here's Samuel. And Samuel, great to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Jarek, right? Did I say
Yarek.
that right? All right, appreciate it. Yeah,
No
doing
worries.
great. Happy to be here.
That's amazing. No, we're very, very excited to hear your story and kind of get a bit of a background on Solvari. But before that, just give us a bit of a background on what Solvari does and what's your role in it.
Yeah, so I'll start off a little bit with myself, and then kind of like how Solvari SR, the concept of the all-in-one panel, kind of came into existence. So I've been an engineer in the solar industry since 2002. At my core, I'm an environmentalist. I mean, back in the 90s, I started the eco club at my high school and started the recycling program. And, even all the way back in the 90s, it was pretty clear that climate change and fighting climate change was going to be a cornerstone issue for my generation. And so I really focused my energy in renewable energy to fight climate change. And then when I graduated from college, I did start and targeted solar because I felt that out of all of the renewable energy options, it is the easiest to deploy. It's the lowest environmental impact. It can be installed anywhere, so there's really no limitations because the sun rises everywhere. So I did focus on solar for that reason because I thought it could have the biggest, most broad impact. And and so out of school, I worked for startups almost exclusively. So that helped me build my expertise with solar products. Right, I did racking designs for commercial roof, residential, ground mount systems. I've worked on trackers, balance of system components like clips and clamps. I've done wire harnesses and worked on inverter housings and did quality controls. And because you worked at startups, I was able to do a lot of stuff outside of engineering to learn really about a business and what it takes to get a business off the ground and take a concept and the actual effort it takes for a hardware concept to go from to into production and to be profitable, right? And
Exactly.
so I did a lot of quality. I was a quality manager. I was a sales manager for a while. I
Wow.
did shipping and receiving. Worked in operations to make sure that we were tracking inventories properly. There's really not a part of the business that I didn't touch in my career in startups. And then eventually I did work for a large company, Sun Edison, which was the largest renewable energy company in the world at the time, because they actually bought the startup that I was working with. So that was great experience, small companies starting up to even working for a really large company and seeing how that works and the inefficiencies that are kind of built into large organizations. And then in 2016, I was fortunate enough to start my own first business venture, which was a engineering firm. Built that to a 7-person team, helped dozens of companies bring their ideas to market. And again, did everything. We did marketing, sales, engineering development, ISO 9000 prep, and just from start to finish, nuts to bolts. So really great breadth of engineering expertise and talent and market talent that we could bring to our customers. Here I am, I've been working in the industry for 20 something years. I'd seen all of the kind of evolution and cost reductions over that time. And, I saw a lot of innovation useful innovation, I should say, in cost reduction in the commercial flat roof. We call it C&I, commercial industrial, as well as on the ground mount and tracker systems, where those costs had continually over time shown cost reductions, while residential, it was flat. And so I really started taking a look at that. Like, why is that? And is it inevitable that that has to be the case? And through my investigation, it became pretty clear that what residential wasn't taking advantage of is economies of scale, right? You look at a tracker, a 20 megawatt job, and not only is there purchasing economies of scale for sure, but there's also economies of scale in the efficiency of the installation. It's just day to day, same thing over and over, the same building block. You train a crew, they work on that job for a year, and it's the same job, right? So there's all these efficiencies that you can build in because of the repetition and the scale. And then you look at residential, and every one of them is like an independent work project, right? With its own engineering. These guys get 450 parts up on the roof. They're putting it all together. They have to be highly trained and skilled, unlike the crews on a utility job, which are just doing one thing all day long. They have to be able to understand and use all these different products and components on the roof. They have to design on the fly, because often when they get there, the array layout doesn't really work for what the real roof is. So they have to re-engineer it on the fly on site. So it's time consuming. It takes high qualified skill, and it's impossible to bring economies of scale to that model. And so then I'm like, okay, well, if that's, and that ends up being what we call soft costs in the system. What I call soft costs is one of the buckets. There are some other things built into there, but it's the inefficiency due to the complexity of the products and the expertise you need in order to execute on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what do we need to do to eliminate that complexity and bring economies of scale to the residential rooftop? So first off is getting rid of the rooftop labor and bringing it to factory labor. But if you do that using all of the traditional methods of doing a solar system, then you're not really gaining much.
Exactly.
So you also have to look at the product itself and say, hey, when that product gets to the roof, can it make a step function improvement in the speed of installation? So what we've seen in residential solar for the last 15 years is marginal incremental improvements. And those marginal incremental improvements haven't really changed the fundamentals that, hey, I'm paying for a crew to be out there for a day. It doesn't matter if it takes them 8 hours or 7 hours. As a business owner, I pay the same price. And those incremental improvements hadn't changed that a step function that changes that calculus. And so whatever Solvari solution was going to be, it had to change that significantly, right?
So then can you walk us through, I guess, the engineering behind the simplicity? Because Solvari is essentially like a plug and play solar system. So
it is.
Please walk us through that. How does that work?
Yeah, for sure. So fundamentally, from a product perspective, traditional systems, there are three completely independent structural systems for a solar array. There's the roof itself, that's a structural system, it's independent. There's the racking system, that's structurally independent. And then there's the solar panels that have a frame on them that's structurally independent. And so fundamentally, when we're looking at our Solvari panel, it's like, hey, I already have a structure there, I have a roof. Why does the mounting have to be an independent support structure? Why does the module have to independent support structure? I already had a roof. And so we take advantage of that. So you can see we've eliminated, well, it's equivalent of 13 pounds of aluminum, and we've offset that with only 2 pounds of polymer. So just from a philosophy perspective, you can see how we've optimized the actual product to reduce materials and use what's already there, which is the roof structure. And so that is a fundamental shift. Second is that we are combining a lot of the functions of the racking system into basically a single mount assembly. So it was a tricky engineering work to do that, but when it was all said and done, the execution is super simple. And that's what we're going for. And so we've reduced what it takes as a product to accomplish the same task. And what you end up with is, instead of 450 parts up on the roof trying to figure out what to do with it, you just bring up the solar panels, screw them to the roof, and plug them together. All the parts and components you need to execute on that are on board the solar panel. You literally don't bring anything else up onto the roof to complete the array.
That's amazing.
And so that fundamental change, the single SKU, the reduction in the skill requirements, the factory build and quality, and the fact that every single solar panel is its own solar array, and that you can get what used to take all day to do can be done in an hour with Solvari. Now you've made that step function change in the organization. And that, if you can get that crew to multiple jobs in a day, which with Solvari solar installers can, then you can monetize that, right?
Exactly.
Before, all these little incremental changes, the business owner could never monetize.
So I think that kind of leads into the next topic of interest, but how has the single SKU concept, I guess, helped your customers manage labor shortages or, even scale faster?
Yeah. So there is the obvious of time savings up on the roof, but what you don't want is you don't want those guys. Okay, great, I did it for an hour, then I go home, right? And you paid the same as a business owner. So you have to change your model and get those crews to multiple jobs in a day. And then what you've done is you've kept your operating costs the same, but you've accelerated your revenue. And right in today's world, so that's if you already have the business to chew that up. But in today's world, if you're a solar installer and you're doing great, business is great, you've maxed out your crews, that becomes your limiting factor for growth. So the first thing you need to do to grow now is find and hire new staff, train them, buy a truck, buy insurance, and then 3 to 6 months later, they're ready to expand your business. But what if your business now has changed over those 3 to 6 months and you made all this investment? So it becomes risky to grow. With Solvari, we're saying, hey, don't take on that risk. Use the Solvari approach. And then as you grow your business, you can grow 2 to 3x your current revenue and maintain the same crews, right? That's a pretty powerful proposition. There's a few other things, the aspect that drive efficiency too, because you'll talk to a solar installer and say, oh yeah, my crew, they can get a 10 kilowatt done in a day. Okay, but how often do they have to go back? Oh man, these guys always have to go back. It always is a second day, They failed inspection, clips were dropping, wires were hanging down. They forgot clamps, so they couldn't finish it. So theoretically, yes, you can get a 10 kilowatt system done with 3-man crew in a day. But in practicality, because of the complexity, there's always something missing. There's always, a large portion of their time is going back just to spend an hour or two, but it took them 2 hours to get there because of a freaking $2 part.
Exactly.
And so we also bring consistency to the installation. Okay, so now you're more likely to get on and off that roof in the time that you believe you were supposed to, so that you can operationalize around that knowledge and confidence that you're going to get your crews to the jobs that you're supposed to in their scheduled timeline. So now you can also look at your margins, right? So a solar installer has to look at their margins and be like, hey, we know all these jobs take longer than they're supposed to. We have more product waste than we're supposed to. And so I have to build in margins into my cost model, because I can't lose on a job if it's a chopped up roof and really complicated. But now with Solvari, those kind of concerns drop away because we're bringing it consistency. So they can shrink their margin and be more profitable.
It's amazing.
And okay, so that's like all the up on the roof stuff. Sorry, Jarek. Let me talk about
worries.
What it does on the operational side, right? So on the operational side, you have system designers that are always going out there and finding, okay, our distributor today has this solar panel, it has this inverter, prices are always fluctuating. I got to make it all work for this homeowner and that. Solvari, it's always the same thing. We've already pre-engineered everything for you. You don't need to say, oh, this module we're buying today is 40 millimeters. I need a 40 millimeter clip. Tomorrow it's a 30. I need a 30 millimeter clip. The wrong parts get sent and it's disaster. Solvari, we take care of all that for you. It's pre-engineered. And so that system designer and that expertise of the system designer, you actually don't need that anymore, right? So that's a position that either you can invest less in for just the more complicated jobs or whatever, or you can eliminate. And then there's also the parts pickers, right? So someone has to get all those parts and components to the job site. And so there's the BOM generation, which is usually that system designer. And then there's a person in the warehouse picking it all, making sure it's on the truck, that inventory management. Those positions now aren't necessary with Solvari. And so those positions can go away. We are reducing your insurance because the same crew is getting to 3 jobs in a day. And if you had 3 crews doing that, that's more insurance. And so you can see operationally, not just up on the roof, but in the entire organization, we're trimming out all the fat and making them very lean so that they can be more profitable.
No, that's a great way to look at it. And I kind of want to step back a little bit because I think the operational side also kind of ties into the reliance on, skilled labor, like we kind of talked about before. I think the question that you kind of touched on, but like I like the clarification is, how do you train new installers and what kind of feedback are you getting in the field? Because I think that's huge from the people that are actually on the ground and using the product, right? So I guess, yeah, how does like the response from Solvari come back
Yeah.
then?
Yeah. So it's been fantastic and it's been super positive. So these are some of the real world comments. One guy said, well, it feels like cheating. It's so easy.
That's amazing.
Another guy, the beginning of the job, they brought all their tools, their toolbox and their bags up to the roof. All they needed was a 3/8 inch nut driver, which we provided because we do that with every system we ship out. At the end of the job, which only took an hour and they were expecting it to take, all day long, he held up his bag at the end of the day at the top of the roof. He was like, dude, I don't even know why I brought this. This was silly, right? I asked
Yeah.
them, what should we change? He said, don't change anything. It's perfect. If you change anything, you're going to F it up.
Yeah.
So, you know, we had a job where they were way behind and they weren't going to start until 11 o'clock in the afternoon. They're like, we're never going to be able to finish this job on time. And, we're thinking about just skipping and we'll come back another day. I was like, guys, come on, come out here, give it a try. You're going to get it done fast. An hour later, they were done. And they were like, I don't know what we're going to do with the rest of our day.
Wow.
Right. So there is a mental shift that has to happen. I had people tell me, because we have time studies on our website, and I'm talking to some folks who are looking at, that can't be real. You clipped all this. I was like, come and try it, right?
Yeah.
And they come to our demo deck and they're like, they install 2 panels and like, okay, yeah, I get it. There's nothing to do. Of course, it's fast. I mean, it is difficult for people that are in the industry to truly grasp the level of innovation and how it's taking it from a completely different perspective. And then people that are new to solar. So we've had significant interest from, like roofers and electricians and home builders. And, they're afraid of solar. They're scared of it. The investment to become a solar installer and the pitfalls and whether or not they make this investment, whether it's going to turn into cash flow for them is a scary proposition. And so we do like demo days where folks can come to our facility and do a demonstration and install. And they're all like, yeah, sign me up. This is so easy.
That's
They're like,
wonderful.
there's nothing scary here. My other job is way more complicated.
That's
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
That's very, very cool. And is this this is just kind of like a little off topic, but is this in for anybody anywhere? Like, or is this strictly in the States? Like, can we bring this up to Canada? Is this, available overseas? What does that kind of look like?
Yeah. It's so Solvari SR, The SR stands for shingled roof. So it is for asphalt shingles, and that's what it's designed for. So any country that's using asphalt shingle technology can benefit from the Solvari install for sure. So this is mainly the U.S. Canada has a lot of asphalt shingle. There's a little bit in Mexico. It's a growing industry in Mexico, actually. And then I believe there is actually some in Australia.
Yes.
But that's about it. Like, rest of the world really doesn't use that roofing technology, which kind of works out for us because it's the easiest for us to deploy this type of all-in-one solution. Yeah.
Fair enough. And I think Solvari, based on that, it seems you guys are primed, for scale. I mean, how are you approaching partnerships with builders, contractors, or maybe even like large installers?
Yeah. So we work mostly direct. There are some small distributors that are carrying our product, which is great, and we are looking at other distributors in like kind of non-traditional solar channels to carry the product. But for a direct sale, it's a pretty easy proposition because if you have a 22 panel system, we just put 22 panels on a pallet and ship it out to you, and it's easy, right? I mean, there's not all this part picking, and nothing's going to be wrong. You're not going to be missing anything. I mean, so for us to ship directly, anywhere in the United States and Canada from Austin is actually not too bad. And we do have on the roadmap distribution centers east and west coast, and we do have customers in Canada. The product has a really high snow load capacity, and it's really robust technology, and it has tons of application use in Canada. So yeah, for sure.
That's amazing. No, that'll be
The one thing
great.
that's important in the Canadian market is that you can really only install like 5 to 6 months out of the year, and so they have a big crunch, right? And to get all of this work done before the snows start or it gets too cold, and they're limited by those months. So if you can take that same crew and you can install 2 or 3 times or 4 times, because some of these are in like planned communities, right? Then you can get a lot more done in a shorter amount of time, and to make sure that within that window of execution, you can maximize your efforts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, that's fantastic. And from, I guess, building hardware to managing the B2B sales, what's been your steepest learning curve as a founder?
I'm sorry. Say it again.
So I guess because you're managing all the hardware, I mean, all like the actual building aspect of things, and then you're also managing the sales, like you said, you've got a bit of a foot in every bucket. I guess been the biggest learning curve as a founder, because this is such a new idea. I'm sure there's always pushback to certain things. So I mean, I guess how have you handled some of the challenges that came your way?
Okay, gotcha. So, you know, there's I'm not necessarily the prototypical venture-backed founder, right? I'm not the 23-year-old kid out of college that knows nothing but has a bright idea, that needs a lot of support systems in order to understand the market, the product, and how to bring it all to bear. Like, I've done this several times now. So, and with solar hardware. So, it's very natural for me. I have the experience to be like, hey, this is just another rodeo. So yeah, it doesn't really phase me. There's nothing that I haven't seen before. In fact, it's a lot easier. I mean, you look at a lot of the other products that we managed, and we would have 50 to 100 different parts and components to build it. Our panel is, it's 5 vendors and like 6 parts. I mean, it's like makes nothing to build it. That's the beauty of the design, right? We took all this complexity and we drove it out of the system. And so when I look at the products and components I've worked on in the past to make a system, they were much more complex, way more scary to deal with from an operational perspective. And then on the sales side, there are always commodities fighting commodities. and I don't have a commodity anymore. So on the sales side, I wouldn't say well, it does kind of sell itself because
Fair enough.
people are looking for innovation. We had people come to the trade shows at our booth and are like, man, I've been coming to trade shows for 8 years, and this is the first time I saw something that's truly innovative. And so
Wow.
you get that kind of buzz and excitement with very little marketing burn. Again, you got to bring people across the finish line. And, if you're really going to leverage Solvari, you need to change the way you do your operations. Otherwise, you're not going to take advantage of it. So that's new. You got to find those innovative, business owners that can see the vision of changing their business to operationalize around Solvari, and then they can kill it. So
Exactly.
so what are the challenges? I guess I think the recommendation I'd have for someone who's trying a new venture is, learn everything that you can learn. Don't rely on someone else's expertise. Go out and get it yourself. And then
Hmm.
when you hear back from an expert, you can have experience to bring to bear to see whether or not that advice is good for your company and your product. Right? I mean, I've installed solar systems. I mean, if I didn't, I wouldn't have understood how to design the product to overcome all the objections before it even got out there.
Exactly.
I probably spent 1/5 to 1/4 of what you would have needed to actually develop this product because I had the expertise to do it.
Yes.
And the timeline that we took for development was unheard of.
Hmm.
So, go and learn, you know, I mean, there at some point you got to get your idea out there too, right? So take the risk and make it happen. You'll learn a lot. Um, but yeah, become an expert at what you're trying to do. I mean, there's a good idea is nothing. Having to execute on that idea, turn into reality, get it to market. There's a lot to learn there. There's a lot of expertise it takes to make that happen.
That's amazing. And you touched a little bit on the marketing side of things. And, obviously with my background, I kind of want to hop back into that. But is most of it coming from trade shows, or are there any campaigns that you're currently or have done in the past that, you're looking to kind of get introduced with, the installers and the business owners that are, actively doing this day to day. They're actively doing installs. They're looking for innovation. What's the way that they're finding you? How are you doing your outreach? And
Yeah.
if it is just through trade shows, why haven't you looked at any other, I guess, avenues?
Yeah. Yeah. So we've definitely done beyond trade shows. Trade shows are great unless you don't get the traffic, and then they're not very great. So for us, we've been fortunate. There's quite a lot of buzz around our booth whenever we do a trade show. So that's great. And we do traditional print magazines, right? Solar is it's a niche industry. It has trade magazines specialized towards installers. There's some that are more specific for the utility and some more for residential. So we can target those trade magazines that are specific to our industry group. They do get some pretty decent circulation, like 20 to 40,000. And then they also, they have a print, but they also have digital, and we've done some advertising there. Within the digital, we've done advertising, but also done technical articles, announcements, so to keep the folks engaged. We definitely know that is getting eyeballs for sure. And some of that is low cost to us, right? We're a startup. We don't have a huge marketing budget. So, if we
Exactly.
can do an article or editorial, then that's a lower cost solution, as well as like announcements. We've built over the last few years a followers list, I'd say, like a lead. I wouldn't call them leads, but just people across the industry, mostly installers, but also industry professionals. And so we email them on a pretty regular basis. I say the cadence is once or twice a month, giving them updates on us and critical things in the industry, but not so much, always I'd say relevant to what Solvari is doing, right, to keep them in touch. We've done influencers, which actually has been probably our greatest investment, I'd say. And so that's great. I think we'll probably keep pushing along that front. And then we've also delved a little bit into like Facebook marketing and
The
direct
meta
marketing or
ads,
whatever,
yes.
and Google ads. I'd say that we're not quite experts at that. We're kind of just dipping our toes, trying to figure out how to market, where to market. We're looking at kind of partnering with our installation partners to kind of co-brand it, right? So that the user knows right who to go to get the product installed. And so there's a lot of work, I think, for us in the next year to kind of flesh that out. And that can be really expensive and not much of a return. So you got to be really careful with that. So we're working on how to navigate that. I think there's also some work to do on our website for SEO and make it more efficient. It's start off being technical, like, hey, this thing really works, to now it's like, okay, well, everyone knows it works. So,
Now let's sell it.
how do you sell it then, right? And then I think the
Exactly.
last evolution of it is to make it really SEO positive to be more noticeable out on.
That's amazing. 'Cause I think you have all the traits. You genuinely have all the traits that you need to be able to sell it and make it. It already is a fantastic product. It's just, getting the eyeballs in front of it and really putting it in, like forcing it in front of people just so that they really know that this is here. This is a real thing. Stop wasting your time, right?
Yeah.
Based on the innovation that you guys are kind of going into, I think it's always exciting to ask a couple questions on, what you're seeing on the horizon for, solar tech altogether. How is Solvari preparing for the next wave?
Yeah. So, I've seen some kind of really cool innovation in residential racking through the years. And I still do. I mean, I was like, not to mention names or anything, but there was like a new mount system that was like super well engineered, very cool. Just from an engineering perspective, I was like, right? But it really does nothing to reduce the cost. In fact, it looked expensive to me. And so, you know, I would expect if we look historically, the traditional racking companies are going to continue innovating the way they do, to make something a little bit easier, but not necessarily less expensive or a big cost savings that the business owner can actually quantify. And so I do see that Solvari is kind of out on its own. I think that the vertical nature of what we're taking on, the expertise that cuts across all these kind of product lines, right? Because solar panel manufacturer is different than an inverter manufacturer, which is different than a racking manufacturer, is different than the installer. All these siloed knowledge base, they're going to keep doing what they know what to do within their silo, and it's a unique. I was fortunate because I worked in all those silos,
Exactly.
and so it is difficult for these organizations to operate differently than the way they are, which is why we always got the same solutions, just look a little different.
Fair enough.
So where do I see, I see on the residential side, of course, there's going to be a bit more battery innovation. There's a lot of battery innovation going on. That's not Solvari's expertise. It's not our IP.
Fair enough.
But on the racking side, I think we are a standout product in solution space, and we have patents to protect what we're doing. So we're looking to grab as much market share as quickly as possible. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
So in the industry as a whole, so let's look at that too, right? Because we have a lot of possible policy changes coming up. And at the end of the day, renewable energy wins. I mean, it's in the name. It's renewable. It means that once you install it, you don't have to keep feeding it, right? All these fossil fuel solutions, which I'm not saying we get rid of oil and gas tomorrow, not at all. I think we always are going to need a mix, and I'm a business person too. I understand how the economy works, right? We just can't turn the tap off. But at the end of the day, give me an energy solution that I can just drop on the ground and not worry about for 30 years. And that's the winner every time. I mean, financially, it just pencils out. Like, if you can get your return in 5 to 7 years in the next 23 to, 25, 20, well, I've got to work on my math there. Yeah, 23 years if it's a 30-year system, right? I mean, you can't beat that from a financial perspective. So we are a technology that's here to stay. We are part of the energy boom. We're only getting more energy hungry, and I'm not, the way I look at solving the solution is abundance, not restriction, right?
Mm-hmm.
And solar energy is perfect for that because we can have abundance and it can be low impact on the environment. I mean, look at the Solvari product. By eliminating the 13 pounds of aluminum and going to 2 pounds of polymer, we save a full year's worth of GHG emissions that solar system would produce before it's even installed.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's a
Right?
great thing to note also.
So, I mean, it's like we're becoming highly efficient in our ability to generate electricity at low cost, low environmental cost. So why not have abundance of it? So that's, and I think that even, when we look at if they're going to take away all the incentive programs, I think it'll definitely slow down the industry. It will. It's a shame because we've built up, all these solar panel manufacturers have moved to the US, and yeah, tariffs help, but the tariffs alone aren't what's creating the boom. It's also that the IRA and the tax incentives and the stability of the market out to the whatever 2030 something, 2035 or whatever it went out to. I'm not sure. And you get rid of that, and it's going to have a dramatic impact on the industry. But at the end of the day, we're not going to go away. And the tougher it gets, the more people will be looking for innovation to compete. And that's what Solvari at the end of the day provides. I mean, when I started this, I always had the perspective, when those IRA credits go away, how is this industry going to survive? And that was the impetus for Solvari, right? Mm-hmm. How do we get 30% or more out of this system so we're not reliant on a federal government tax breaks to be successful? So that's built into our ethos as part of our business model. And we know that with Solvari, there's a path forward for residential solar to still be successful without them. So as a business, I'm not worried about it, but as an industry, it absolutely will slow us down. And, climate change isn't waiting for us. Right?
Yeah.
So
You're right.
Yeah.
That's that's a interesting note to kind of end off on, because there's so much more innovation going in, and being able to really adapt with like the times, regardless if it's policy or if you're still going off with fossil fuels and carbon emissions, there's always going to be that next step. So especially in solar, I think what you guys are doing is great, is really cutting down the times. And as for everybody listening, that was Samuel Truthseeker of Solvari, reminding us that innovation doesn't always mean reinventing the tech. Sometimes it's just about rethinking the process. So if you're in solar, especially on the installer operations side, this episode should hit home. Solvari's approach proves that smart design and clear focus on speed, simplicity, and scalability can unlock serious value for the entire energy ecosystem. So as always, thank you for listening to Off the Grid on the Record. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube. And if you're building that future of energy and have a story worth sharing, we'd love to hear from you. So until next time, keep it real, keep it renewable, and thank you, Samuel, for joining us.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Take care.